This is a 1989 Specialized Rockhopper. It was found in Wellington by Darcy in as-is condition. Thanks, Darcy. It's a triple-butted Cormulli frame with 26-inch wheels and cantilever brakes. It might look a little scruffy at first, but this frame is internally in very nice condition. It has some external patina, but it looks great as is. I do tidy up the paint a little bit, but for the most part I leave it as is. I don't do any repainting of this frame. The main thing is changing out all the components, upgrading things, and the Dropbar conversion. So all the standard Mountain Alex parts are there. I'm not really a purist, so I don't really have an issue with changing everything out, making it non-factory. But if you do, you're probably not going to like this too much. I upgrade some of the parts, and some things get sort of downgraded. I couldn't find a nice triple front derailleur to work with the road shifters, but there are some nice goodies on it anyway. So I've started out by soaking the bottom bracket. I tend to do this at the start of the build, just while I'm dismantling everything else, just to give it a little bit of time to soak through. The bike came apart quite easily. Nothing was stuck and there were no damaged threads. So one of the other parts on this bike that I do keep in this rebuild are the old tyres. So I'm not too fond of these old Richies, but they'll stay for a little while at least. They give it a nice classic look, and they'll do the job for some gravel riding and a little bit of road riding that I'm going to do with it. But I'll be upgrading those to some Panaracer Gravel King SK Pluses at some point in the future. So this bottom bracket lock ring was being a bit stubborn, though it was pretty beat up, so my usual tool was having a hard time. But I got it out in the end. You can see the liquid all pouring out from when I was soaking it. And nice to see that it's pretty tidy on the inside. You can sort of see it here, and then I try and look up the frame tubes, the holes there, see if there's any internal rust. The drive side I did have to put in the vise. I do this a few times because my vise gets a really nice grip on that BB shell. I'll chase these threads up next time I put a bottom bracket in it. I just left them the same this time around, but yeah, next bottom bracket I'll chase those threads up because they're a little bit rusty, but they're okay. Hello, so I thought I'd go over the whole shifting, braking situation before I get into this. I'm impatient, I want to get this started, but I thought it'd help some people out. So road shifters, they work with mountain rear derailleurs, as far as I know, up to 10 speed. 10 speed, I had some issues with my last setup. That was a road bar end shifter, shifting a mountain rear derailleur. It only selected about 8 of the gears. So I combated that by attaching the cable on the opposite side of the clamp bolt on the rear derailleur, and then it shifted all 10 gears. Sort of the same as up the front. You will need a road front derailleur technically to shift a crankset double or triple. You can use mountain double derailleurs though, just by doing that same thing. So you mount the wire, mount the cable on the opposite side. So that's the normal side, you just mount it on the opposite side, and then that'll move the derailleur further with the same amount of cable pull. So it's cleaning time. This frame is filthy, it's got heaps of grime on it. So I'm going to use, has a little bit of degreaser and water in here. So you don't want to use a degreaser that's going to harm the paint. So something like Simple Green or something. Some dishwashing detergent work really well. So the frame is all cleaned up now. Actually this white part came up pretty nicely. A lot of grime came off it. So this point now is where I would normally rust treat the inside of the frame. So you put some rust treatment, sort of a preventative. There's a lot of different brands. I use something that's called Penetrol rust treatment. Frame Saver, there's a Bow Shield T55 or something, I can't remember what it's called. Bow Shield does one. Basically it's just a spray that you spray inside the tubes and it helps prevent rust. So after doing that, you let it set overnight, It's a pretty messy job. But after that is when I would go over the external rust. It's not too bad. Without removing the paint, I'm not going to know how bad this rust is. I never get too worried about external rust because I can keep an eye on it pretty easily. And then a few other parts sort of around the bottom bracket area, I'll go over those as well. So by sanding those, that was just a little bit of 400 grit. It sort of exposes the peaks of the rust. So this is what it's like after the 400 grit. So after sanding with 400 grit, I go over the spots of rust with some CRC rust converter. It treats and seals the rust spots. So it works best if you expose as much of the rust as you possibly can. That way the rust won't keep forming and form off in different directions and stuff. The CRC product turns the rust black, so keep that in mind. Although it does act as a primer, so you can paint over it once it's dried. So it wasn't quite time to pack up for the day, so I decided to put the front end on. It gives me a bit of an idea of stem length. With a sort of weird looking spot here. Now you can use some spacers, or I tend to use a bell here, which just sort of hides it up. Okay, it's the next day, and the rust converter is all set and sealed. Next thing to do is go over all the parts that I've sanded. So I'm going to go over with some 1000 grit to scuff it to sort of this level. So it's less abrasive and I can easily polish it back up to a nice shine. You could definitely make this look nicer if you went up in stages. So I just did the 400 grit before the rust converter and then 1200 grit after that before polishing. Obviously I don't want to spend lots of time on it, so just 1200 grit and then a little bit of light polish. We'll see how it is. So I'm pretty stoked at this point. I didn't actually expect it to be this tidy. Going by the first inspection, you can see quite a bit of rust and there was grime all over it. It's really hard to tell how it's going to turn out, but it ended up being quite a tidy bike. Yeah, I was hoping it would be sort of a cool wrap bike drop bar, but it ended up being way tidier and way shinier than I thought it was going to be. That's not a bad thing, it's just I did not expect this, so stoked. I'm beyond happy with this frame set. So I'm lucky enough to get some Dior XT parts every now and then. This bottom bracket was off a bike, I don't actually know what it was, but it had a whole heap of XT parts and that bottom bracket just fit really nicely, so that's what I decided to use on this. Now this is probably the worst part on the bike. It's a Sora Road triple front derailleur, so it's not in very nice condition and Sora is not really a nice group set, but it works great. I'll change it out at some point when I find something nicer. It's just I haven't found a road triple derailleur or a road triple compatible derailleur as an alternative to that. It's shifting great though, it's just a little bit ugly. Don't really have any issues with that though. Bit of function over form, and it means I get to ride the bike straight away, so it's sweet as. What? It's tangled. Okay. So there are lots of different ways to protect your chainstay from chain slap. If you've got an old bike, you've probably seen it a bunch of times. So basically, chain slap is where the chain slaps the top of the chainstay and it creates paint chips and damage, which leads to rust and stuff, and you can avoid it, so why not? So you can use paracord to wrap the chainstay. This is actually a nano cord that I'm using, so it's 1.17 millimeters or thereabouts thick. Paracord's about 4 millimeters for the 7-inch chain stuff. So I decided to use the nano cord just to create a little bit more clearance. I messed it up the first time because I didn't allow myself enough paracord, but I redo it. So I wanted to do quite a nice design, but with the nano cord it wraps a little bit differently to regular paracord. So I just ended up using 2 different colors side by side. And then I finish it off how I finish a handlebar twine, which you'll have to look into. It's basically a loop that runs the whole length, and then you pull it back up inside itself and then cut the ends off. So when I was re-greasing one of the wheels, actually I think it happened to both of these wheels, I noticed that the valve stem hole was a little bit wallowed out and it can create some damage to your valve stem. So I took to it with the file just to make sure that I wouldn't have any flats that way. So I bought this XTR wheel recently. So it will take up to a 10-speed cassette. I'm just using a 9-speed though. Originally it came with an 8. This XTR red derailleur is also an 8-speed unit, but they work perfectly fine with up to 10-speed cassettes. They have more than enough range. I think I used a 32 tooth cassette. Plenty enough with a small cog up the front. And yeah, no issues with gearing. Should feel nice. So this part I never really know which way to go. You can either go over the top of the binder bolt or sort of around to the side. I normally just give it a couple of goes and see what happens. And that's new hardware. So this bar tape is ESI RCT wrap. It's the first time I've used it. I completely forget every time I'm going to wrap bars or drop bars for myself that this tape exists. I really like the feel of ESI silicone grips, specifically the chunky and the extra chunky. So I'm stoked to have some of this finally on one of my bikes. It worked out really nicely. I'm really glad I got this. It is a bit more expensive than some bar tapes. It's not as expensive here as the lizard skins tape, but I prefer the feel of this a lot more than that lizard skin stuff. So I'm happy with my purchase. I would recommend it. If you've tried ESI grips before, then yeah, go for the tape. It's great as well. Yeah, feel that bar tape, bud. I tend to like Brooks saddles on all of my bikes. I don't have as many as I do bikes though, and it's riding time. So I've had a Dropbar Specialized Rockhopper before. It was a later model one, I think it was a 95, I'll have to look up. It was purple to blue fade. That rode really nicely, but it was too small for me, so I eventually sold it. So I'm stoked to have something that's in my size. This is a 59cm top tube by 56cm seat tube. So these large old Specialized don't really show up in my size. I have a hard time finding anything that's of this age in my size that I like. Especially cool because it's a triple butted frame. So it's nice. It's really quite a nice bike. I'll keep this for a long time. I don't plan on selling this. This is a bike for me. So I'm stoked about it. So I'm really happy with how it rode. The fork has quite a bit of flex to it as well, so it's quite nice over this gravel terrain. I will change out the tyres because they're not really what I like. They feel a little bit squirrely, probably partially because they're old and worn, and tyre technology has come quite a long way, so I'll definitely get some Gravel King SK pluses on it at some point, or something similar, but definitely something newer. And then a front basket, and then that'll be about it for this bike. Unless I can find a triple front derailleur. So I tried to get a little video of the fork flexing. It's quite hard to do when riding on the bike there.
Hello. Tropical. It's amazing! I'm so happy with the bars and the bar tape. Oh, it's so comfy. I can't. It's so good. Like, the bar tape doesn't feel thick, but it provides enough padding and enough vibration damping. It's so good. Amazing!
And that's all for this video. Thanks for checking it out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!